This is a slightly dated talk from data we collected some years ago. Okay, and this comes from our work with Frujuo communities in Rajaji National Park. Okay, some of you here worked on this theme. Okay, and it's a very simple talk because we track movements of just 3 adult hornbills, okay, during the course of the work. Okay, and we were trying to characterize dispersal kernels for the entire plant community. So we characterize them into functional groups, and we're trying to get movement data as well as fruit removal and dispersal distance estimates for a whole range of plant species found here in the Himalayan foothills. Okay. The concern being that as it gets warmer as things warm up, these species would need to migrate to cooler habitats upslope in the mountains. And but the fact that they could be dispersal limited by the loss of frugivores or the loss of habitat, okay, or a combination of both could affect their plant responses to climate change. Okay, this was our main objective. Okay, while we look at when we look at an entire plant community as such, okay, the largest seeds in most forest habitats are dispersed by the largest frugivores. Okay, that's because there's a size constraint on the seeds that can be swallowed by smaller frugivores. Okay, thus mammalian frugivores that we have in our landscape, the elephant and the deer, disperse the largest seeds we have in these tropical or subtropical dry forest landscapes we have around here. Okay, and among the avian frugivores, the hornbills and barbets disperse the largest seeds we have here. Okay, we don't have very large seeds in this forest, which like you find in wetter forests, which are dispersed by hornbills. Okay, the largest seed which is dispersed by hornbills here is around 9 mm. Okay, so the hornbills, of course, I mean, the other speakers here, they represent a very important component of tropical ecosystems in both Asia and Africa. Okay, they disperse somewhere around 30% of the plant community, 20 to 30% of the plant community in different sites. Okay, in other sites, seeds as large as 50 mm are documented to be dispersed by hornbills. Okay, but hornbills vary tremendously. Within the group, there is a huge range of body sizes. Okay, from birds over 3 kilos to lesser than half a kilo. Okay, also they differ quite a bit in their diet. Okay, there's some species that eat more insects and hunt more often, and there are others that feed predominantly on figs. Okay, some do display habitat specialization. Okay, they also differ in their social structuring. Okay, within the group, you will find species that are more that tend to live in groups versus those that are more structured. The family structures are smaller. Okay, this variation leads to differences in how hornbills move and where seeds land. Okay, and the hornbill breeding behavior, that the female is encased in a nest and the male provides nourishment through a period of 2 to 3 months, does influence their dispersal consequences. Okay, and breeding overlaps often with periods of high fruit availability, especially the non-fig fruit in across the seasonal tropics. Okay, several hornbills expand home range in the non-breeding season, and they're foraging on a lot of figs during the non-breeding season. Okay. This has been proposed by Margaret Kennard and Tim O'Brien that hornbills possibly can be classified into these two strategies in terms of their foraging and breeding. Okay, a large bird strategy, not necessarily with respect to body size, but with respect to its behavior, where the species is more nomadic outside of the breeding season. Has very long daily displacements of 30 or more kilometers. They're not territorial, move in large groups, okay, and predominantly feed on figs. The great hornbill that we find here in India could fit into this description, okay. A small bird strategy has been described for other hornbills, which are more territorial. This is outside of the breeding season, okay, they're more territorial. They make efforts to defend foraging areas, okay. They have short daily movements and high percentage of animal matter and lipid-rich fruits in their diet. Okay, though it's not really proven, we suspect that the oriental pied hornbill, which we worked on, fits into the small bird strategy. Okay, this is thanks to Sartaj Kuman. We have this amazing illustration of the hornbills of the Himalayan foothills where we work. Oriental pied hornbill, great hornbill, and the Indian grey hornbill. Okay, of these three, the Indian grey is the most common. Okay, and the great hornbill is like relatively uncommon in our landscape. Okay, and the Oriental pied is now surprisingly expanding into urban areas here in this landscape. It's become very, very common in urban Dehradun since 2014. Okay, it was not documented at all in urban Dehradun from 100 years of birding records. We don't have records before 20 years. I mean, 20 years prior to now, we don't have records before 2002. Okay. I mean, it's a very, the Oriental pied hornbill is it's a very fascinating bird. It's around 1.2 kilos. It's not as small as your gray hornbill. Okay, it's somewhere between 800 to 1.2 kilos. It has a very diverse diet. Okay, it eats a whole range of feeds on a whole range of fruit species besides figs. Okay, and we suspect from what we observed, both at shooting trees and the movement data that we have, that it is territorial. Okay, we tracked 2 females and 1 male in spring. Okay, and this is a month and a half before they nest in our study site. Okay, and the tags were fitted using a harness and in such a way that they could fall off easily. Okay, so we did lose a couple of transmitters in this process. Okay, we tracked birds for a maximum of 14 days. Okay, and the tags were programmed to give us locations every 3 minutes. The reason being that we wanted to get an estimation of the dispersal kernel, okay, for which we need very fine scale movement data. And the frequency was decided based on the gut retention times in hornbills and the minimum gut retention times in hornbills. Okay, so this is the data we have. Okay, the maximum displacement in 3 minutes was 1.3 kilometers, and the mean displacement was around 11 meters. Okay, this is the typical daily movement patterns that we found. The birds would fly from their roost to the feeding areas, a cluster of Putranjiva roxburghii trees along the Ganges River. Okay, and we mapped the Putranjiva as well as fruiting Putranjiva as well as ficus species, which hornbills were feeding on at this narrow period that we were tracking them for a month. Okay, and all of that was in a tight cluster. Okay, along the riverbank. Okay, which you see these the green dots represent the Putranjiva trees and the blue are the ficus, and the hornbill movement intensity, use intensity, is overlaps with the fruiting trees. Okay, We combined movement patterns of hornbills with gut passage data that was shared with us by Ushma Shukla and Rohit Nani Wadekar, okay, from work they did in the Northeast, okay, using a different bunch of plants than what we've been studying. But nevertheless, it's the only data that was available for the Oriental Pied Hornbill. And we picked up random locations in their daily displacements, starting from, when they arrive at fruiting trees to see how far seeds are dispersed. Okay. So we're getting a mean of around 120 meters. Okay. And it appears that 50% of the seeds may be dispersed within 27 meters. Okay, that's the median. Okay, so it's when you compare this with the kind of dispersal kernels that you get from, say, Rohit's data in the Northeast, this looks quite different. Okay, so this is just three birds, but it's very insightful. And this is three birds before they went into nesting. Okay, so the seed shadows were projected and overlapping, of course, with the bird's movement ranges, which is quite small, okay, in the chilla habitat. Okay. Sorry about this slightly mixed up slide. Okay, and also a bit dated. So if we look at the Oriental Pied Hornbills in this study, okay, the mean and the median dispersal distances are much lesser than, as I mentioned, Rohit's other work, as well as earlier work from Africa. Okay, I would like to thank all my collaborators and friends who really helped run this program for 4 years in Rajaji. Okay, Preeti and Geeta are here. Okay, as well as David Westcott, a collaborator from Australia. Okay, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Okay.
Hi, Soumya.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Fantastic to see you.
Nice.
We are still waiting for certain questions which people are typing. So meanwhile, I will just nudge one set of discussion which will probably benefit everybody. So your talk, apart from giving the statistics about the wonderful work you guys have done, did nudge a lot about bird territoriality, which is still a big conundrum. Like I have read through multiple literature, but we still interpret telemetry of birds pretty much similar to mammals, where their whole life history traits which push them to behave in a certain way differs from birds totally. So would you touch upon these points if you have had similar doubts?
Yeah, it's fascinating question, Nishant. Okay, when we look at even Gita worked on bulbul movements in the same habitat in Chile, and that was published. Okay, so we found that bulbuls were having larger daily displacements than the hornbills we were tracking around the same time. Okay, and bulbuls move in a very resource dependent manner. They're tracking resources that are spread over very large spatial scales, and that's why they're so closely associated with lantana. Okay, they it's really fascinating, and it's a question that I wanted to model, because hornbills, it's very interesting when you watch them at fruiting trees, especially Oriental Pied. Okay, they'll chase away other birds, and they're guarding a particular resource, and they tend to guard that resource. Okay, so uh, it's not like they're even getting up and flying off to another tree and coming back. But a pair of birds arrives and they spend most of the day in a particular tree. Okay, just hovering in and out of the tree. Okay, for the Oriental Pied Hornbill, not necessarily for other species. Okay, but we have data from just a very short window in March. Okay, this was pre-breeding. What would be required is data across a longer stretch of the non-breeding season. Okay, and also a comparison with the other smaller hornbill species we have here, the Indian grey. Okay, which I don't know. I'm a bit confused about the Indian grey. Okay, so we'll We'll only answer if we have more data.
Indirectly have touched upon two more questions which popped on our screens. So people quickly want your opinions about sudden increase in the number of oriental pieds. So you sort of hinted that they tend to chase away. So will you say something about that? And they want to know if Indian hornbills fall into which category, large bird strategy or small bird strategy?
I didn't get the first question.
Was my question audible to you, Soumya?
No, I didn't understand the first half of the question about the first question. Okay, let me get to that large bird strategy and small bird strategy. We have birds who could fall into both the categories. Okay. The great hornbill that we have at our side fits the typical large bird strategy. So do the bulbuls we have at our study site. Okay. They behave more like large birds, though by body size they are smaller. Okay. When it comes to the oriental pied hornbill, and I also suspect the Indian grey hornbill, they're following the small bird strategy. They're more territorial outside of the breeding season, okay, and they're guarding resources. Not, the territoriality is very interesting. It's not been studied. Same with barbets. We see the same thing going on with barbets again. Okay, it's a very interesting group that's very, very, very poorly studied across Asia. Be it in terms of the breeding behavior, which is a chorus lecking, or in terms of the way they guard resources outside of the breeding period. Okay, so it's a question that's out there, and I hope more students will look at this in the coming years.
It's sad that you're caught up towards the later part of the session in the afternoon, Soumya, because this has hinted us, like, this is what I was expecting, that certain talks would nudge us into directions which can be explored by all of us as community, because it's high time that we start probing questions as a unit as well. Like, we will continue to like check individual species and various length and breadths of the continent rather, because we are integrated here as a continent. We have few speakers from outside India as well. So like when we discuss it next time, I guess like we should have like certain strategy to discuss in the panel discussion would be placed beforehand. And we will have like better discussions. We'll touch upon these points. We have more questions which we'll shoot to you about like nest site fidelity and all. But fantastic talk. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. See you.